Hello, my name is Colton Zenner, and our hope for today comes from one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It comes from Mathew 11:28-30. Let's read this together. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus' Gospels are full of challenging and insightful teachings, sometimes being quite direct and harsh. And then we come to things like Matthew 11. This may be one of the most encouraging verses in all of Scripture. But first, we have to understand a couple of things coming from this verse. First, he says that we are to come to him, or he says, come to me. When Jesus says this in other times in the Bible, it's usually followed by some sort of challenge, like take up your cross and follow me. Or take a look at John 14 when it says, no one comes to the Father except through me. Or the story of the rich young ruler where Jesus told him to sell everything he had and then come and follow me. This time, it's just a message to those who are weary. It's a bit of a different tone, and we're given this hope of possible future rest. Most obvious thing that we need to understand in this passage is the language of a yoke. Unless you somehow missed the invention of a tractor, you don't regularly use the term yoke. A yoke was used to harness oxen to a cart or a plow, and it's kind of like a U-shaped with a shoulder brace that went across. It was an item that was used for putting oxen to work. It's also language used by many of the rabbis and teachers of Jesus' day. They would use it in the sense of the yoke of the law or the burden of keeping all the laws or doing what was right. It was familiar language to all who were listening. For us, we all carry a sort of weight or a yoke, much like his original listeners. The burden of work, life, family, or some of us, maybe even the burden of our past, our sin or our wrongdoings. Jesus is saying here that we don't have to carry that anymore. Jesus offers rest from our burdens, but we must first turn and listen to him. Last is this understanding of rest. Rest is hard to find in these days, if we even can wrap around our heads around the fact that it exists at all. We desire to be busy. We can identify with our busyness. In fact, many settings reward busyness. Some would say even worship it. They say, if you're not working 60 plus hours a week, you're not grinding hard enough. Nothing can wait in our culture. We must rush from thing to thing. We must go from thing to thing. A little exercise to do is that the next time you're rushing through your day, take a second to breathe and analyze your mental state and your emotional state. I'll tell you right now that mine's not great. I'm quick to speak, easily angered, and really irritable, all of which are kind of the antithesis of the love that God calls us to. Busyness is the active enemy of our true rest, and in the end, the enemy of a close relationship with Jesus. I've heard it said that if Satan can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. And this has some merit in this context. It is just a distraction from Jesus. There is one thing that I neglected to tell you about a yoke earlier, though, and that makes this whole passage the encouragement that it is. Regularly, a yoke was not just made for one animal. It was two U-shaped neck braces on one T-bar that was to share the work of carrying that burden. It was a shared burden. The yoke and burden is not just good and light, it is shared. Jesus does not force us to go it alone. We do not do it in our own strength, but with assistance from God. This passage cries out, I'm with you, and I can handle what you're going through. Do not rush out of your time with God. Reflect on things that God is moving in your heart. Pray, really pray, not just make it through your checklist, but a time where you recognize that you're talking to God and share your true heart. Draw close and breathe. A real breath, not just oxygen, but to enjoy. Recognize that he is with you and he's working with you today. To conclude, I wanted to read from Hebrews 4:9-11. And it says, there remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience. I hope this can be an encouragement for you today. God bless.